Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heman and I'm currently in London and delighted to be your host for this important discussion. I serve as a research and communication coordinator at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities, where I work at the intersection of research, advocacy, and strategic communication on minority rights issue across the region. I'm also currently pursuing social innovation and entrepreneurship at the London School of Economics, where I explore how innovation approaches can drive meaningful social change. As you know, our topic for discussion is the building peace through equality, the United Nations role in promoting human rights and minority rights. To give you some context, that in the world marked by conflict, inequalities, and divisions, the pursuit of peace through equality has never been more critical. As the United Nations play an important role in this effort, with promoting respect for human rights is one of its core purposes, which is outlined in the UN Charter. This includes advancing human rights to prevent conflicts, sustain peace, and foster sustainable development through instruments like Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious, or linguistic minorities. The UN addresses these discrimination and protects minorities and integrates human rights into peacekeeping and peace building. And today's discussion sits at the very heart of our work and my studies, examining how international framework translate into real world impact and how we can bridge the gap between policy and practice, and how we can sustainable world through the genuine equality and inclusion. I'm genuinely honored to moderate this discussion with three extraordinary voices who are not just talking about the change, but actively creating it on the ground across South Asia and beyond. First up, we have Mr. Syed Muaz Shah, who is the Executive Director of Center for Islamic Law and Human Rights in Pakistan. As a legal scholar, he focuses on faith-based justice, constitutional protections, and the intersection of Islamic jurisprudence with human rights. Over to you, Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Heman, for having this and organizing, and SARIM for this discussion on UN's role in that. In fact, I'm now sitting in Geneva, so I'm actually now based out of Geneva these days. But the fundamental question that you ask about the rules and regulations within the international sphere that particularly in the context of South Asia, how they impact or they promote minority rights. We have to look at some of the baseline documents that are there in the United Nations. So we start off with the UN Charter itself. Article 1 and Article 55 commit the UN to promoting universal respect for human rights without distinction to race, sex, language, or religion. So this is the preliminary document that unites all the global states, and its foundational text has mention of this position. Not only that, the very first document that was passed in the UN that is highly cherished, as we all know about that, is the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Presented by Eleanor Roosevelt and many others, including representation from Pakistan. Most people don't know that about our Pakistani female representation that was there, that was part of this discussion. So we were part of this initial UN declaration, in which Articles 2 for non-discrimination is probably the most important one. And as you can see in the numbering, you see non-discrimination is Article number 2. So the seriousness of keeping that at the top. And not only that, but Article 18, which is freedom of religion and belief, and then Article 27, which is the participation in cultural life. So these are probably the central kind of articles in that. The third document I want to pay attention to, in which a lot of South Asian states have actually signed on and ratified, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, is the International Covenant on Civil Rights and Civil and Political Rights, which is known as ICCPR. Their Article 27 is probably the most important and significant one, where it explicitly protects minority, cultural, religious, and linguistic rights. So now we also have a mention of linguistics as well, along with the cultural, religious elements. And this is a binding commitment that is ratified by these states that I mentioned. The fourth document, which is a more recent, when I say more recent, in the past 30, 40 years, after the United Nations initial years, is the 1992 Declaration on the Rights of Minorities. Now, of course, this is a soft law and this isn't in the hard law, just like UDHR, but UDHR has been, as you can see, codified through other mechanisms. For example, ICCPR, as I mentioned, takes from UDHR and builds on that and creating binding commitments from states. Just like this, it's envisioned that the UN Declaration on Minority Rights of 1992 will also then, and this is a comprehensive document, perhaps we can have a completely separate session just on this, but this soft law emphasizes state duties to protect individual minority identity, participation, and equality. And it covers a lot of comprehensive aspects. Fifthly, I'd like to mention the Human Rights Council and its special procedures. Now, this has actually been, we see a lot of evidence of this because they have a special rapporteur on minority issues 2005. And we've seen activity in South Asia from the special rapporteur, and we'll talk a little bit about a sample case that has actually triggered some actually further action. So this is, it monitors violence and issues country reports on various countries during minority, and Pakistan itself has been subject to this as well. Along with this, we have something called the UPR, which is a Universal Periodic Review that the Human Rights Council expects states to provide, in which Pakistan has provided, and Pakistan has been put back into that, along with India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and all the states in South Asia on their minority rights issues. To go into each one is to go into further detail, but basically this is a kind of like countries holding other country accountable when their turn comes up on minority rights issues, and they're allowed to ask them cross questions. And so this is a good kind of self-governing mechanism, which allows the state to have to, respond to those critiques from other states. So this is something that, that I encourage everyone to study, the Universal Periodic Review and the various country reports that have come throughout the years. Lastly, I think probably what's the most important one, which is the judicial mechanisms that are available. Now, there's two here. One is the International Court of Justice, in which states can bring complaints. And we know this has recently been highlighted in South Asia in particular, because Gambia brought a case against Myanmar on the potential genocide that was going on with the Rohingyas as a result of that. And that's an ongoing case since 2022. And so along with that, the other judicial body, which is under a separate treaty known as the Rome Statute, is the International Criminal Court, which is also analyzing the Myanmar-Bangladesh Rohingya situation in the mass deportation and the by the authorities there, which is of course also against international criminal law. So that's under a different kind of mechanism. But because Myanmar is a party of the ICC, they are subject to its jurisdiction. So we're looking forward to seeing some rulings from there as well. And their case started back in 2000. So there's kind of a dual approach for the ICJ and ICC. And this will be the first true South Asian minorities case before these judicial bodies together, which is, I think a unique mechanism, again, when we talk about the UN bodies and that. But I think I'll end with that note, and hopefully if we have further kind of follow-up questions, we can go through that. But as you can see throughout these various documents and covenants and protections, it's quite broad. And we see the active implementation from states holding other states accountable in the UPR system, to having the special rapporteur play a role in giving country reports unbiased in their analysis on the minority, which then highlights issues and allows others like the judicial system to take those evidences into consideration before a decision before the ICJ and the ICC. So this is kind of like, hopefully we can segue into further details and discussions on this. But thank you, and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah. That's, crucial. The religious framework and human rights can reinforce one another. What really strikes me, how this applies to minority protection across contexts, whether it is religious minorities in Pakistan, Dalits in India and Pakistan. The challenge is ensuring these frameworks protect rather than marginalize communities. Moving forward, our next speaker is Ms. Soumya Tiwari. She offers us an academic and organizational perspective that complements our on-the-ground activist. As a doctoral researcher at the FORE School of Management in New Delhi and deputy head of academics at the International Association for Political Science student in Canada, Soumya explores how global governance structures can and must better incorporate gender and minority representation. Her research on inclusive policy frameworks and youth leadership addresses a critical gap, the distance between international declarations and institutional implementations. Soumya's contribution to international forums have provided vital insights into making equitable societies not just aspirational goals, but achievable realities. Over to you, Soumya.
Thank you so much for such a warm and a kind introduction. I must thank South Asian Research Institute and Furqan for especially inviting me. And it's indeed a pleasure and a great privilege for me to be a part of this discussion. So, talking about the theme that was given to me to talk today was building peace and the role of United Nations through equality and in promoting human rights. So, amid the geopolitical confrontational world order that we are currently living in, we see a lot has been witnessed. The new world order has been transitioned. We have seen displacements, we have seen migrations, we have seen minority suffering, and whatnot. Similarly, when I think about both political rights, human rights, or civil rights, we always believe that there's one organization at the helm of affairs which provides legal mechanisms and frameworks to address our concerns. But in order to understand, or going beyond the discourse, what stands crucial is to understand the pivotal points of policy grounds and the global governance. So, United Nations as a whole organization talks about how international human rights lays down certain kind of obligations and framework for different governments to act in certain ways. So what India might be practicing in promoting human rights or political rights, Bangladesh would be doing something else. And this process varies from one end, from one country to the other. And the approach, the reconciliation aspect from the part of governance or the countries differs again in terms of promoting human rights and protecting the fundamental freedoms. So, for example, if I cite the Indian Constitution here, the different articles, Chapter 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with the fundamental rights. Chapter 4 deals with the directive principles of state policy. And under fundamental rights, when I talk about Article 21, right to life and personal liberty, stands very crucial. So, the Constitution upheld, it's not bifurcated in terms of what is given to the majority and what is given to the minority. And I must address that one of the greatest achievements that United Nations as an organization has gained, the creation of comprehensive body of human rights law. It's universal, it's internationally acclaimed, and all the countries have a set protocol, have a set norm to follow beyond what is asked to them, beneath their countries, of course. And now the question comes is whether these rights are internationally accepted. What is the question of promoting the civil, cultural, political, or social? After having this plethora of whole rights and understanding what each of them means to different countries, UN also maintains their cordial relationship and cooperative relationship with the stakeholders within each member state to also assist them, in terms of understanding or in terms of inculcating what particular right would mean in terms of granting the equality status for the minorities. In terms of, if you see the developed world, the concerns for LGBTQI community is particularly predominantly very high. And when you compare the emerging markets, it's very, very low. Right. Similarly, India has given the third gender link for the transgender community. But the question is, as a minority, do they get equal rights in these kind of countries? And as compared, you see a different picture with the developed world altogether. So therefore, the foundations of the body are very clear. It's delved deeper into the Charter of the United Nations and the UNDHR, which is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And since the onset of 1945, UN has completely or gradually, I would say, transformed in expanding the human rights to encompass certain specific standards for women, children, minorities, LGBTQ community, as I mentioned, and the transgender community, basically to protect them from the discrimination, which had long been a very common and a very prevalent society, in a very prevalent picture in most of the societies, right? Now, I think it was in the year 1948 when the United Nations on Declarations on Human Rights had actually passed this article, which was the resolution of Article 217, which is like, there should be a common standard for all the groups, whether they're coming from adherents of one dominant group or they're coming from the inferior status of the minority group. Everyone should be treated equally. Similarly, if again I come up with the example of Indian Constitution, Article 15 to 18 talks about right to equality. Now, one thing that comes to my mind is very dichotomous. When we say right to equality, what do we actually mean? What do we imply? Whether it's that, both a girl is getting a free education. Is it what we mean? No, perhaps not. It is basically that irrespective of any background, irrespective of any caste or creed, everyone should have a right to be treated equally and not a differential treatment. And that is what UN had also mandated in terms of granting equality. Further, as Professor Syed Muaz had also mentioned about the International Covenant on Civil Rights. That's again a very prominent uh, uh, policy document that holds and it also holds optional protocols for the minority communities uh, based on the civil rights and also on the political rights. So, what punishments to be granted, if they are not treated with equal respect, what differential treatment they are offering. So all these sort of mechanisms needs to be addressed very, very properly. Having mandated certain documents, certain policy frameworks does not merely address the question of building peace. We, all the countries have been actually focusing on peacekeeping missions. India recently also during the G20 mission, where it focused on the one Kutumbakam and one family mission, right? Where all the countries are one family. And India had also sent 290,000 peace employees on the peacekeeping mission. But the question is, you just cannot ensure the missions in terms of having a protocol. It has to come from each individual living in the society. For example, today I'm living in an emerging market, India. It's an emerging market. And I come across someone which I know merely comes from a minority background. I must acknowledge and appreciate that person irrespective of what background he's coming from. The major acknowledgement has to come from an individual centric perspective from the micro level. Only then the most of the things would be addressed at the macro level. What we do right now is that most of the countries they are doing is we're focusing on a macro level where governments are trying to come together to forge on a collective missions, to have a cohesive approach, to have collaborative stakeholder engagement and whatnot. This would only help when each individual stands still and would actually account to make a difference in the society, that we all are equal. We stand equal no matter from which part of the world we come from. But that is how we stand equal and we try to forge peace. Further, when we say that how UN is trying to mandate the working conditions, trying to mandating the political environment, the social environment, very basic needs come. Okay, so this has been mandated. Again, now the question is whether it's being practiced in that fair manner in the countries or not. Again, that's a question of policy again. So basically, the right to dignity, which is a very, very prominent form of right, human right, which is prevalent in the organizations as well and in the culturally well societies as well. Right to social protection, right to live with dignity, right to education. And other than that, the civil rights as well, which is on how you are able to accommodate in an environment which is offering you a free and fair speech of expression. These are very, very basic things which are needed to address. However, I might be contrary to the views what other speakers might think, but I definitely feel that it is again an individual approach that needs to come at the forefront. Only then the collective stakeholder engagement and the cooperation of global governance can be forged together. Having said that, there are other mechanisms, there are other frameworks which can be collectively talked about at a dialogue level, where countries can come up with dialogue one level. We do keep having track one, track two diplomacies, delegations between the countries, where they do talk about international cooperation, they talk about trade cooperation. However, similarly, so that's sort of a thing could also be addressed so that every minority that we see, every person belonging from that minority can be addressed. Because unless and until the government tries to provide them the shelter or dignity, the main thing that needs to come is the respect to the minority. At the end of the day, I might not feel very secure with having all the rights unless and until I get that respect from the people living in my society. That's all from my side, and I look forward to having a discussion further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Soumya. At SARIM, we analyze exactly these policy frameworks and their implementation across South Asia. What our research consistently shows is that the frameworks exist as we have outlined, but the mechanism for enforcement and accountability, especially for minority rights, remain weak. Moving forward, our next speaker is Ms. Reeta Pariyar. She joins us from Nepal, where she has become a powerful voice for those whose voice have been systematically silenced. As a writer, human rights activist, and social entrepreneur, Rita's work confers some of the most entrenched form of discrimination like caste-based exclusion and gender equality. Her activism centers on Dalit and minority rights communities that are facing intersecting layer of discrimination in Nepal. Rita is not just advocating for change, she is actively building it. Her courage is in addressing deep-rooted structural inequalities has established her as one of the Nepal's most inspiring young change maker. Over to you, Rita.
Hello, namaskar. Good afternoon. Perfect. The previous speaker has said many things anyway. Your topic this time is very relevant in the time of Nepal, actually. This building peace through equality, the UN roles in promoting human rights and minority rights. I'm totally agree with the Soumya because he has said that no matter how many rules and regulation has implemented through the national and international, as long as your neighbors and each individual surrounding by you, if are not aware of this, so they always try to snatch and take away of your rights and can be brutal, and they can be loot guns. And what happened in Nepal recently, it's an example of that. So I'd like to, start with a bit of the brief of the UN, why the UN invented, so what's their purpose actually, and what is happening right now. So basically, we have to understand that things. I think, according to me, there's a previous, our Dr. Syed has said many articles about UN, they helping all in the world, that mostly in South Asia, which article has been published, but they've been working together years and years, but things seems more complicated day by day. So actually, the UN, United Nations, is established after the Second World War. Their main purpose is to make world better in a peace, and respecting each other's country's sovereignty, and promote the global cooperation. At the same time, that the world was destroyed, and then we all need economic transformation. So that's what their main purpose was there. So prevent the future conflicts, and then promote global cooperation, secure peace, and respecting each other's sovereignty, each nation's sovereignty. And after some time, then they realize after 45 and 48, in near to 48, they think that we need more work on a human society, because humans are still on that trauma, because they will not know if their behaviors can affect other humans too. So then they started talking about protecting human dignity, ensuring all the rights of the people. So that was the work has been done. So we can see the history, how much that impact to the society. That is another discussion we can have, another panel discussion, how much the UN effects of the work. But then they invented the rules, the articles, and then talking about, and they sending the people all over the world, and talking about all Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UNDHR, in 48, that sets the standard for human rights, recognizing inherent dignity in every person. And again, they started talking about the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, IAPSS, CCPR, and then Convention on Elimination of all the forms of racial discrimination, short. So they started that too. And even not only the minority of indigenous, religious, Dalits, and they started talking about the political rights too. For example, being in the same country, and they have a different many political parties, and then if you believe in a one party, and then a majority party always try to harass the minority parties. So the way I have a right to be Muslim, so someone has to right to be a Democrat or socialist or communist. So that's why they started talking about the political rights too, and in mostly the political minority groups, which is incredible. And then we have seen in our countries even having a lot of panel discussion, conviction, world forums, and so which is given us to enlightenment to think about that. So which is very grateful to know these things from the UN work. But when it comes to the promoting human rights minority, they actively working actually minoritized community, minorities, indigenous people, ethnic, religious groups, refugees, state-led peoples. UN has been working on ongoing role is that, and but they have doing all these things. And if I see the Palestine, I mean, just the ceasefire happened just recently, but before that, and the UN was very handicapped. I mean, they were very helpless, not doing much enough work through my eyes. So anyway, so I'm like, I hope in the future the why they this organization established. So what's their objective and what's their motto? And I hope they will gain back that and continue helping the world for this reason why they opened the organization. So recently is LGBTQ and racial justice, gender equality, these things, and I think in Nepal is the most of the amount of the international fund is coming for Nepal. That right, especially for that right, what I know so far. So basically, the UN has doing all these peacekeeping things and equality, promoting human rights, and then the minority rights. They've been doing these things for a long time. So. But what is our nation is doing on that? Are they cooperating with this, or they have their own way of doing their own things? So previous speaker Soumya, I'm very I like to take a sentence as a borrow. She said that if any international organization has ensuring and trying to implement any one of these rights, if the national government is not ready to do that, so we are helpless. It's kind of the stateless people. So we like to believe that our country is working on that or not. Our the way that we have our own governance, working with the global governance hand to hand or not. That is the main priority things now. On we have to think. We have to think and we have to critically think about this. So we have to not to be keep quiet now. Then we have to keep raising the voice against all discrimination and then harassment towards the minorities. And as our Mr. Syed sir said that like it's Rohingyas in Myanmar, and then in Bangladesh is Hindus minorities and many other issues. We have to speak for them too. What is the way out? And basically the main many issues of racial issues, religion issues, and language problems in Nepal. I think in based mostly in South Asia, because South Asia is very diversity of people and many religious people are there, many speaking language, many religions. So more conflict is in this side compared to the other side of the world. So we have to join the country of the people like you, me, and the other peoples to as a dot can connect it and make a line and give a one picture. So we have to speak for all these rights, and then why the rights is not really working properly. So there's always there's always reason behind that is as geopolitical issues, and so everybody wants to expand their the powers, and there's they try to help in the name of many fund and many organization, and trying to know our own the truth and own our each country's reality, and then on the basis of that they will know all our loopholes of our nations, and it's easy to make them divide and rules. So geopolitically all this matters, and the matters of who is going to be a strong country and who is taking the side of which country, so emerging countries. So in Nepal is based in China and India. So we are the sandwich always. So we have our own problems. We have the basic problems of the Dalit, indigenous. So that's always there, and the many article has been published. We have written in a constitution, Article 40, Article 32, you name it. But still, every day people are dying, people are being raped, mostly women. It's always victim of any wars and any conflict, as you all know. So mostly the women are always in problems. They have to face all this trauma of the not addressing the real issues of the nation, of our country. So I don't have to tell the India has the same issues. I think Soumya has addressed a bit of it, and Pakistan has their own issues, and Bangladesh or many other South Asia has we have the very many common point and common issues actually, which I recently studying about South Asia conflict. So what we have to do further up, I don't think this is the one panel discussion is enough, and I believe there are many more professors, intellectuals know these issues. I think that will be really fruitful that if you invited them and then address these issues. But I'm very happy. Well, you guys even still consider that we can speak up for these little matters of the things according to our own knowledge. But what I still believe is that we have to find the way out. We cannot just sit and talk about our problems, and our problem is always there, and that has been there since many years. And if you see the if we go to the past, I think South Asia is one of the wonderful places in the world, which we have many cultures. We have our own indigenous way of living life. We have a best way of farming, best culture, diversity. Everybody was happy and living happily, but things has gone changed day by day. We see our own people as the enemy. So we have to think that is where this come from, So who is planting the seeds? So we have to think that too very carefully. So we have to, as everybody has this thing, so we have to really find the way to get connected to each other, and then talk about our issues, and then respect each other's existence. So we have to get treated as regardless of the color, caste, religion, political ideology, sexual orientation. All the things is it's on a side, but we have to treat it as another human being. It's not that someone born UK and America, they have the valuable life, and someone born in Pakistan and in Nepal and India, and they have the worthless life and worthless human rights. So we all are a citizenship of the world. So we should get the equal rights as everybody should get it. So we should advocacy about this, and we should be united for all the causes, and to fight with the world, who is holding our power. And thank you so much, SARIM, for having me today. I'm sorry I was not very well, so my preparation was not that great, but I hope I bring certain points to connect all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your honest assessment, Rita. Since we conclude our discussion, let us reflect on the profound impact of our discussion. Our panelists, Ms. Reeta Pariyar, Mr. Syed, Muaz, and Soumya Tiwari, have showed how UN's unwavering commitment to human rights serves as the bedrock for the global peace. From combating caste and gender discrimination in South Asia to harmonizing faith-based justice with universal protection and advancing inclusive governance worldwide. And these efforts not only prevent conflict but also heal societies fractured by inequality, fostering resilience or shared prosperity. We at SARIM believe that peace begins with equality, and equality begins with recognizing the dignity of every human being. Ending with Dalai Lama's word, peace cannot only last where human rights are respected. We need to act, engage, and advocate and demand accountability for a word for true equality. Once again, thank you for being with us and joining for this discussion. We look forward to continuing this conversation through our upcoming webinars and publications. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heman.
Thank you.